my name is Jackie. I'm a setter and coach from Toronto, Ontario. I am creating videos to share my climbing journey with you and everything that I learned. I am primarily an outdoor climber, but definitely love gym climbing, especially as a setter. I love getting creative with what holds I put on the wall and what climbs that I create. I've also been getting into competing, so I kind of do it all, but definitely mostly a boulderer. Today's session was at Climbers Rock, and it was a volume session where I was trying to send climbs in as few attempts as possible. I put a limit of 7 attempts per boulder. 7 was a pretty random number that I chose because 5 felt like too few and then 10 felt like too much. So I went right in the middle. 7 felt nice. I'm kind of notorious for spending way too long on a boulder. I can spend, hours and dozens of attempts just trying one move. I have some comps coming up, so I really wanted to focus on sending in limited attempts. Throughout the video, I will also share my top 4 tips for sending climbs in fewer attempts or sending faster. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So this was a volume session at Climbers Rock, which is a gym in Burlington, Ontario. So the first climb is this V7, and this was a bit of a dyno. I'm not exactly sure what the intended beta was. My partner Ben did some very different beta for the start, but I read a little dyno because the hole that you're going to is really good. It's not a full bucket. You kind of have to pinch the jug just because it's pretty much a ledge. It's really flat, but super pinchable. So I found that that was key to holding on to that hold. The next climb is this V8, and this one's pretty tricky. These holds are kind of my nemesis. They're pretty slopey. I don't exactly know where to hold them. The part that's holdable will vary with every single variation of these holds, so you never really know what to expect. It was a really cool sequence. You have this toe hook start into this double gaston on really bad crimps, and then you're into a really hard undercling sequence. And then I managed to match that sloper, which was really hard, required lots of body tension. And then as I tried to reach for the next hold, just lost it, and definitely you want to do that move as controlled as possible. So here I talk about what my tweaks are going to be in my next attempt.
What are you going to do differently this attempt, Mrs. Jacqueline DeRosie?
Oh, you're filming? I'm just going to try to go a little higher on that big hold and really push into my feet so I can get a bit more height getting to the next hold, because I was really close to doing it, but
makes sense. Are you not gonna climb up and try individually, or are you just gonna give
no,
ground?
because this is a competition, man.
No,
I think 7 tries.
Okay.
If I don't do it,
I think if you don't do it this attempt, you should try it.
Yes, I'll try it in ISO, Coach Ben.
So on my next attempt, I make those tweaks. What I realize is that the top portion of this hold is pretty much unusable. My partner Ben was able to use that part of the hold, but he is ungodly at pinches and slopers, so that beta wasn't going to work for me. The bottom was definitely a lot juggier, so had to stay down there. I go up and I try this section in isolation, and I realize that I can put my right foot all the way down on the start hold, and I could keep the tension while reaching for the third last hold. I get a tricky heel hook on a small crimp, get my foot up, and then work my way up to the top. So, managed to do all of the moves. It was just about putting it together. And now I'm going from the start again, just dry fire off of this undercling. I think that maybe I wasn't quite resting long enough between attempts and didn't realize how taxing the match on the undercling was, but I just kind of lost it and wasn't able to do it again. So here we're trying again, 7th attempt, and at this point I am getting a little frustrated. I'm like, what's happening? I was able to do this match before and now it feels really hard. So I think I was just getting a bit tired on that climb, and I decided to move on. The first tip to sending climbs faster is to route read. If you don't know what route reading is, it's essentially just planning out your strategy before you get on the wall, going through all of the moves, visualizing yourself doing the sequence before you get on the wall. This is going to save you a lot of energy and prevent you from hesitating on the wall. So some things to think about when you're route reading is 1, what are all of my holds? What is the path that my climb takes? 2, what features are mine? Are there volumes that belong to my climb that might not be as obvious? Can I use the arête when I'm climbing? 3, what is the crux of the climb? Is there any spot where I can sort of relax and recompose myself? Route reading is something you learn pretty early on in your climbing career. A lot of beginners and actually a lot of intermediate climbers never practice it. They kind of just get on the wall and rely on their intuition. It's important to develop a strong climbing intuition and to be okay with thinking on the fly at times. But it's also super important to get good at planning and predicting what you're going to do and feel like on the wall. I thought some pretty in-cut crimps and scrunchy looking moves. And I managed to do this move and catch the next hold with 2 fingers, and I was really surprised to keep that hold even with that really nasty cut. And now I'm just working my way up to the top, making sure I don't mess up the sequence. And then most of the time the finishes are pretty good at Climbers Rock, so you can get away with just powering up to it. Now this VA was really tricky. It's these super slopey fat pinches, but very cool sequence here. I do like a cut loose move, lay backing on this big pinch, working my way up, and then you get a really slopey pinch, and then super high heel. And this was my flash attempt, went really well, got to nearly the 3rd last hold, but I didn't understand how to rock over that heel. Now on my next attempt, I go and try this move in isolation, and I try to just go for the 3rd last hold, but it is very slopey, so I didn't see myself holding that cut basically. Trying it again, and then managed to do the heel rock over to the 3rd last hold, and then sort of go for the next hold, the 2nd last hold. And I felt like I could have done this if I had been a little bit more precise when going for the 2nd last hold. So I decided to just go from the start again, because I was confident that when I did get there, if I was successful in rocking over that heel and getting the 3rd last hold, there was a pretty high chance that I could sort of power up to the 2nd last hold. And then the reason that I bumped back down to the 2nd hold from the 3rd hold with my right is because it's a lot better, and since I have to do this cut loose move, I want to be on as good of holds as possible. Again, laying back, getting the foot up, holding lots of tension. A common theme with Climbers Rock climbs is that they're very body tensiony, and you kind of have to like hold your breath the whole time, just keeping so much tension through the feet, because the handholds a lot of the time are really bad, but your feet are better. So you have to think a lot about your lower body, which is why a lot of climbers who come out of Climbers Rock are very good at using their lower body. So this is definitely a place that I enjoy climbing at, so that I can learn how to utilize my lower body as effectively as I can. Here we're rocking over the heel. I get the 3rd last hold. I feel solid, generate dynamically for the 2nd last hold, and then manage to finish the problem. So I was really excited to get that one done. That was definitely like the hardest climb of the session. Tip number 2 is to collaborate. Whether this means watching someone climb the climb that you're about to try, or getting some beta from somebody else who's already climbed the problem. For example, I was climbing with Ben, my partner, and he's been climbing at Climbers Rock for a really long time. So he knows how to grab onto these holds better than anyone else. On the Black V7 that I try in this session, he tells me to get in the very back of it and cut my hand. If I was alone, I would have never guessed that that's the way that you hold onto that hold. So it's nice to have friends to climb with that can give you that kind of information that isn't as obvious. Now we're trying this V9. It's pretty crimpy, high feet. The handholds weren't too bad. They were kind of in a strange orientation, so they were hard to grab. And the feet were pretty small, but not too small. So it's just about finding the right beta and body positions. For a few attempts, I try to just dynamically go for the big side pull from like this crimpy pinch. It's not a very good hold, so I couldn't really see myself holding that cut. I end up trying the move in isolation and end up doing it with a higher foot. So this one didn't feel as bad. Maybe it was more my style than the other one. Tip number 3 is to isolate. So isolate your crux. Go up using other holds from an easier problem and try the hardest part in isolation. This way you can figure out the missing link before you put the entire problem together. Because say the crux is in the middle of the climb, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to climb through the beginning a dozen times just to get tired for the crux. Figure out the crux and all of its specific in an isolated fashion before putting it together. Now we're finishing off with this V7. And this one I was a little bit scared to try. These holds always intimidate me. They're very slopey. What I discovered, because my partner told me, was you really need to get right at the back of these holds and kind of cup your hand like this. So it's a super specific grip. If you ever see these holds in your gym and they just feel really bad to hold on to, try that technique out. Get in the very back of it, as far back as possible, and sort of cup your hand. It's weird, but it works. And it will also save your wrists a little, because I find that just holding onto these as slopers, they kind of make my wrist feel really tweaky. And I'm trying to figure out what to do here. I do a little rose, which I think is the intended beta, but the right hand, like the hold that you end up rosing to, feels really bad, very slopey. I just keep sliding off. So essentially I gave up on the rose beta and decided to go with a match. The hold that I'm trying to match is a pretty small hold, so instead of just doing a piano match, I kind of put my fingers around the hold and then match it that way. It's a weird kind of swap that was very specific to this hold. I get a super high foot and I end up just finding a nice left foot to stand on and finish the problem. And tip number 4 for ascending faster is utilize tactics. So a few really helpful tactics are brushing your holds, especially if they are friction dependent like slopers or fiberglass. Resting is another really important tactic or strategy. If you're not resting long enough, your attempts are not going to be as high quality. So make sure that you're resting. How long you rest will depend on the duration and intensity of the attempt. And also, it's really dependent on you and how you feel. Regressing a move is another great tactic. We make the move a little bit easier and then progress it as we get more comfortable with that version of the move. So figuring out tactics that you feel are really helpful for you will enable you to send faster. So I hope this video was helpful and that you learned from watching me attempt these climbs. Or at least enjoyed watching me attempt some of these climbs. Make sure you comment down below if you have feedback or anything to share, and I will see you in the next one.